11 o'clock, the witching hour, so we can begin. Welcome to the July 6th meeting of the Hamilton Zoning Board of Appeals. We have quite a lengthy agenda this evening, so I'm going to dispense with my usual custom of reading the entire agenda at the beginning. Little explanation before we get going. The first four items on the agenda, 139 Cutler Road, 8 Villa Road, 12 Honeysuckle Road, and 116 Gregory Island Road. We actually had a hearing on at our June meeting. We were unable at that time, because of technical issues, to get the Zoom going. So we went forward with some of the items on the agenda. After the meeting, after consulting with town council, because it had been posted that there would be, the meeting would be on Zoom as well as in person, was determined that the meeting was, and the votes taken therein were deficient in terms of the open meeting law. So we've had to repost the meetings. My plan is, we'll see how it goes, is to call on each of these items to see if there's any input from the public. If there isn't, I think the board can then, based on what we, the record from the June meeting, we can re-vote and go forward. So I know this has been something of an inconvenience to some of the applicants, for which I apologize. So on the assumption, or perhaps hope, that things will remain the same, I've actually drafted decisions, which, assuming we re-vote, I will have filed with the town clerk tomorrow, so that the 20-day appeal period can begin. I apologize for this inconvenience, but that's the best I can do. So, with that said, an application for the property owned by Marin Glenn Zipage and Flaminio Lanzillo for the property located at 139 Cutler Road. The applicant is seeking a variance under zoning bylaw section 5.5.1.3, reconstruction after catastrophe or demolition, to construct a new single-family dwelling at the site where a single dwelling was demolished. Are there any comments from members of the public, either in the room or on Zoom? Yes, ma'am?
I'm Susan Lawrence, 105 Rock Maple. I just have a question. Is it 139 or 145 Cutler Road?
This is for 139. Right after this, there will be a separate hearing for 145. That's a new application.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from in person or in the Zoomosphere? If not, then I would entertain a motion for the board to grant the relief requested based on the record from our June 6th meeting. Is there a motion?
I motion.
There's a motion by David. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Bruce. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, it's unanimous. As I said, I will file the decision tomorrow. Since Mr. Lanzillo is here, I am going to move to the application for 145 Cutler Road. So this is the application of Maren Glenn Zapage and Flaminio Lanzillo for the property at 145 Cutler Road, seeking approval for a special permit under zoning bylaw 5.5.1.3, reconstruction after catastrophe or demolition to demolish or construct a new single-family dwelling. So, Mr. Lanzillo, identify yourself and tell us what you're proposing, please.
Yes, I, Flaminio Lanzillo, owner of 145 Cutler, proposing to tear down an existing structure. I think you have photos there. You can see it's pretty well dilapidated and ready to come down by itself. The house that would be going there would actually be more conforming than the structure that is already there. Obviously, the lot's an undersized lot, and it's still gonna be an undersized lot, but it will meet the setbacks, as that structure that's there now does not meet the setbacks, so it's actually more conforming. The house already has an approved septic design, health department approved it, and we actually have already got conservation approval. And
Okay. Any questions from members of the board?
I have none.
Are you still looking at it?
Was this the property that the building department was looking at? The square footage of the lot?
The note from the
Building inspector?
building inspector
Not that it,
is applicant seeks to demolish and rebuild a dwelling on a non-conforming lot as to area. A special permit is required under 5.5.1.3. Dwelling will meet all current setbacks. There is a discrepancy between what the town has on record for lot area. The assessors have it at 10,000 square feet, and the plot plan submitted, which shows 22,800 square feet. Also, the rear lot lines are not dimensioned. Regarding the property, the zoning district is RA. We found an error on the zoning map and are working to fix it.
So all those items are still pending?
so, for the better.
I'm sorry?
So all that's still pending?
The change to the zoning district, yeah, I guess, the map.
But that's nothing that's can
Right.
affect what we're
Right,
deciding.
right. Any other questions from members, comments from members of the board? Are there any questions or comments from members of the public? Either in person or on Zoom? It seems fairly straightforward, and certainly from the pictures will be an upgrade from, I mean, there's fixer-uppers and there's fixer-uppers. So I would entertain a motion to grant the special permit as to the applicant. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Moved by Bruce. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by David. Any other questions or comments? If not, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye, okay. This one, I haven't written the decision yet.
okay.
But, so it's the usual procedure. I have 14 days to write and file a decision. I usually get them done within a week, but,
Excellent.
and then there's the 20-day appeal period. Then you can get your building permit. I imagine you could probably get the demolition permit before then if you wanted to get started on that.
excellent. I much appreciate it. Thanks
Okay.
for moving it along like.
Sure. Okay. I'm going to jump around here a little bit, but,
Thank you.
okay, next, we had the application. Again, we had a hearing and vote at the June meeting for the property owned by Jeffrey and Kristen Sardarelli at 12 Honeysuckle Road. Applicant seeking approval for a special permit and a variance to construct an attached garage and accessory apartment. Zoning bylaws 3.6, accessory apartment, and 4.0, dimensional and density regulations. We did with the variance was withdrawn, the plans were redrawn, so actually they were not at the end seeking and we were not granting a variance. Is there anyone here in the public, either in person or on Zoom, that wishes to be heard regarding the application for accessory apartment at 12 Honeysuckle Road? If not, then I would entertain a motion that the board revote based on the record, which in this case was from the May and June meetings. And just for the... Yeah, okay, no, there were no conditions. So is there a motion to grant the special permit for an accessory apartment?
I motion.
Okay, David, second.
Back and forth.
Seconded by Bruce. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay. The decision will be filed tomorrow.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you. Next, we have application for request for a finding of fact, extension or alteration of a non-conforming use under zoning bylaw 5.3.4.5 to construct a screen porch for the property owned by Lawrence Katz at 116 Gregory Island Road. Anyone from the public, either in person or in Zoom, wish to be heard regarding the application at 116 Gregory Island Road? Okay, if not, then I would entertain a motion to grant the relief requested for the property at 116 Gregory Island Road, based on the record at the June meeting. Is there a motion?
I'll motion that.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Just for the record, there was one condition that the screen porch may not be enclosed. Any further discussion? If not, then I'd entertain a motion to grant the special permit with the condition as read for 116 Gregory Island Road. Is there a motion?
I motion.
Motion.
Okay, motion by David. Second?
Second it.
Second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the motion is unanimous. This decision will be filed tomorrow. Okay. Next, and this also was discussed at the June meeting. This is the application for the property owned by Silas and Ashley Neri for the property located at 8 Villa Road. applicant is seeking approval for a special permit under zoning bylaw 3.0 use regulations to construct a garage with more than 4 motor vehicle spaces. We did meet and vote on this, but I know there are some people here who, is Mr. Maneri here, first of all? Does he want to be heard?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here.
Okay. Although we've gone through the record, but if you want to briefly tell us what you're proposing.
Sure. It's a 30 by 45 multi-purpose barn on our property, kind of tucked into the woods, into an old cellar hole. And it's designed to have 2 bays in it, but as the building inspector said, because of the formulaic approach, including the 2 other parking spots we have under our house, that we needed the special permit for this line item of the table of use. So yes, it's 30 by 45, but it's going to have shop space, a staircase, and will realistically only fit 2 cars. But you know, we come before the board to request your consideration for a special permit in order to get our building permit.
Okay. Just for, this is not the entire base, doesn't incorporate everything that was, came up in the minutes of that June hearing, but for clarity, the draft decision that I had drafted, I'll just quickly go through it so that people will understand, hopefully understand the issue. Petitioner has a single-family dwelling in the R1B zoning district containing approximately 2.4765 acres. Petitioner proposes to construct a barn on a 30 foot by 45 foot footprint with 2 automobile bays and workshop space and a gym multi-purpose space on the 2nd floor. There would be electricity and seasonal water, but no bathrooms or sinks. While the proposal is for a 2-bay garage, because of the building size, it could contain more than 4 bays, so a special permit is required under section 3.0 of the zoning bylaw. Petitioner submitted a site plan dated November 11th, 2021, revised through December 1st, 2021, and building plans dated November 2021, revised through April 5th, 2022. These are the final plans on which this decision is based. A portion of the gravel driveway will cross a recorded trail easement. Access to the trail easement will be maintained. The special permit will not detract from the surrounding neighborhood or derogate from the intent of the bylaw. So that was what we did in June. Any questions from the board at this point? Sure, okay. Any questions or comments from members of the public, either in person or on Zoom? Okay, please come to the podium and identify yourself.
Heather Ford. I reside at 609 Bay Road, but I have 2 parcels that are abutting the 8 Villa Road project that we're discussing. So I received notification as an abutter, but that's not my residence. The reason that I'm here tonight is because we were the developer of the original property. There were, when we bought it, it was a large parcel. We divided it into 5 lots, of which 3 of the lots had an easement request on it. And the reason that I'm here tonight is to make sure that that easement stays, because it's part of a larger trail network. although a little bit neglected just because of the usage has been less lately, but we still want to preserve it as part of our Hamilton Trail Network. It goes from Gordon College in Wenham all the way up to Essex. It ties it all in nicely. The way, I assume I was not aware about notices that went out for the Conservation Commission, but the Conservation Commission has issued a report, allowed them to chop down the trees, and the only reason this comes even a little bit into your jurisdiction is because in order to get into that garage, you got to cross with the driveway, and the driveway is now changed the beginning of the trailhead, and there are very large stones. But the thing, all of that aside, I'm not fussing about the building. All of that aside, a sign has been put out at the end of the driveway that says, private drive, private property, which to me is a deterrent to someone coming into using the trail. So I wanted to make sure that that went on record. I don't know who in the town of Hamilton actually cares about easements. They're all over the town, and the new homeowners coming in, certainly it's not important to them, but it's important to me, and so I wanted to just put it on record that I'm happy about the way the driveway. When I spoke to Mr. Neri, I called him about 2 or 3 weeks ago. He indicated to me he was going to maybe research a more friendly sign. I haven't been over there to see if that friendly sign went in. And he also said that there's like 5-inch stones that were put in. He said those were put in because the Conservation Commission asked for them, and his final driveway material would be something not 5-inch stone. Which would be good because then horses and bikes and, any non-motorized vehicle could go over it and get to the trail. But in looking at the picture, we're about 100 feet in now before you can even see the trail. So the trail is completely, at least about 100 feet of it is covered now by his activity. And if you were a person coming down, you wouldn't know the trail was 100 feet back unless you were really clever. So thank you for listening.
Okay. I'm not certain, well, I'm just speaking for myself, first of all, I don't think the board's not seen the easement, and I don't think we have any desire to. I mean, that's generally beyond our purview. My own view is assuming there is a valid easement, let's just make that for an assumption for the moment, and there was going to be, it was going to be physically changed to affect the easement because of the proposal, that arguably would be in the jurisdiction of the Board of Appeals for purposes of this hearing. I'm not certain that the signage is within the purview of this board. That's my view.
I hear you. I just don't know whose purview it's within, because it is a recorded easement. Somebody in the town has gone back through like 50 years, found it's been sitting there. Gordon Conwell, we bought the property from Gordon Conwell. They had it on there, so it's been on there for a long time, and it's followed the recording all the way through.
Well, again, I'm not an
either.
expert on easements,
Yep.
and I'm certainly not going to
I know.
say that I'm an expert on easements where I'm sitting with my zoning board
Right.
chairman hat on.
Right.
But I would think that, depending on the terms of the easement, that
We also brought up the
that
easement.
whoever it runs to can enforce it. But I don't think that's my view, that's necessarily through the zoning board.
I think you could modify it and move it over if it was in your way, but you have to still provide for this easement, and it's on your, in some fashion.
In our last meeting, we did specifically mention the easement. I brought that up directly, questioning is is the easement still going to be there? Is it going to be bothered? The homeowner, homeowner who's doing construction stated he would make the easement accessible. if they're in the middle of a construction project and things are in process, we can't say if they have or have not. I mean, it's construction, you know, everything's delayed, people are getting things, so. But that was part of his agreement when we voted last time, that he must make that accessible and it must be done. If he violates that, then that would be an issue that would have to come back to a different board. But that he did state that he would make that available.
And he told me the same thing, and I'm not, my only thing is if I was walking down there and I saw a sign that said private drive, private way, I personally would not walk on somebody else's property with that sign on it. I think reasonable people could disagree on that point, but I do think that most people would say no, because it doesn't look like it's a trail anymore. I took
Could I
a
speak briefly?
picture of it if you'd like to see it.
I take your point. I mean, I'm not arguing about it, but I'm not certain that it's the Board of Appeals has the power to opine regarding the signs. That's my view.
I would say town manager would have to.
I think the owner wanted to say something.
Yeah, just to give the board some context, and I apologize that this is taking up your time tonight. The riprap was installed at the request of the Concom as a construction road, so that's why that was installed. Everything that was said is correct. I'm aware of the easement. I am not building upon it, and all we're doing is improving that area to make it the driveway into the barn. So, and I also have to do 4,000 square feet of restoration planting adjacent to that. So, in fact, the area is going to be much improved for everyone. I have the sign up because numerous times since we bought the house 5 years ago, people have driven up there and gotten stuck. There used to be a berm before I started the construction project. Actually, the riprap road is what replaced the berm. People would get stuck and have to get towed out, and it would be the middle of the night. The easement is pretty poorly drafted. It doesn't identify a benefiting party. It also specifies a 10-foot path for walking and horseback riding and excludes anything motorized. So clearly the easement itself keeps being violated. I've had dogs run through my backyard and try to run after my kids and stuff like that. So it's something we're aware of. And like I said, we're not building on it, and we're only improving the area, and I have the signs up to sort of fend off the people coming onto my property, which I think as a property owner, I'm allowed to say that it's private property and that it's a private driveway. There's no benefited party aside from myself that can use that driveway. So that's the story. I did talk to Mrs. Ford. You know, I think maybe it's going to be something she and I have to agree to disagree upon, but I completely agree with the chair. I don't understand how this is germane to my application for special permit in this case. And it's something I'm happy to talk to Mrs. Ford about separately. But it's, I'm sorry that we're having to talk about it tonight.
Any other questions or comments from members of the public, either in person or on Zoom? So I guess the next question is, and I'll just, again, was a finding of fact in my draft decision that a portion of the gravel driveway will cross a recorded trail easement. Access to the trail easement will be maintained. That's a finding of fact. Do members of the board, well, what's the pleasure of members of the board, either in terms of changing the decision or modifying the decision or whatever?
I see no reason to change it. Maybe we just get with whichever department in town handles signage for the trails to have them mark the trail clearly so that the homeowner isn't bothered by people driving up his driveway, but an individual coming by will at least know that that's the access point for the easement, but that's a different department, so we should talk to whoever handles that and let them deal with it.
Okay.
can I mean,
Just a minute.
okay, but you're talking about putting signage on private property where there's nothing that directs me to do so. I'm not in any
not
violation
on your
by
property,
not
sir.
having signage or by putting up the sign that I already have.
We wouldn't put it on your property. That's why I said we'll let whichever department handles this sort of thing, we'll let them handle it, but give people.
Yeah, but I live on a private road.
And like I said, that department handle it. I haven't,
Okay.
still agreeing with it, so.
Fair enough, thank you.
You were going to say?
I was just gonna say, they should, if they could get together and just work out a plan, maybe you divert the path so that it's not, maybe go around behind the barn, something like that. I don't know what the landscape's like there, but as long as there's a connection.
Okay.
Bill, this is Andy Phillip. I believe that I'd be inclined, I'm aligned with David and Bruce, just because Mrs. Ford had mentioned that she's fine with the building side of it, and that falls within our purview, that I'd be inclined to continue forward with the permit and agree with David, let the people who work on signs figure out the signage.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, if not, then I think the sense is that the board is comfortable with the decision we came to, but we do have to revote. And in this case, since there has been further input, so is there a motion to grant the decision for a special permit relief from the use regulation based on the record of the June 1st, 2022 and July 6th, 2022 meetings? Is there a motion?
I motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. In this case, I do have to tweak the decision. I won't be able to file it tomorrow. I expect I'll file it on Friday. So, thank you, everyone, for your input.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Okay.
What else do we got?
Okay, next is the application of Patrick and Eileen Livermore at 71 Fox Run Road. Special permit requesting approval to demolish an existing attached garage and mudroom and build a two-car garage and mudroom with living space above on the same footprint under zoning bylaw section 5.5.1.3. Is the applicant here? Okay, please identify yourself and tell us what you're proposing.
Sure. I'm Patrick Livermore, the homeowner of 71 Fox Run Road. We're moving in with our 3 small children and my wife. We're looking to create some additional living space for our family. So what we're proposing to do is to add a playroom or a family room over our garage and then connect that to the existing living space. And then what we'll continue to do is draw that same plane of the garage right into the existing dwelling.
Okay.
But by doing that, we would tear down the existing garage and rebuild that so that it can actually house that structure over the garage itself.
Okay. The application says your existing, the existing nonconformity is side yard setback and front yard setback. It doesn't look like it looks to me like the front yard setback conforms, but it's, on the one side, it's closer than 15 feet. Correct?
Yep, that's correct. It's 14.7 feet
Yeah.
on a 15-foot.
Okay. Any questions from members of the board? Any questions or comments from members of the public, either in person or on Zoom? Okay. Any special conditions that the board would think would be appropriate, assuming we vote to approve the special permit?
Are you redoing the foundation? Is it a whole new foundation?
Yeah, I think we'd be digging that out and repouring a new foundation.
Just gotta make sure you stay in that same footprint.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
If not, then I would entertain a motion to grant the special permit as filed. Is there a motion?
I motion to grant it.
Moved by Bruce Gingrich. Is there a second?
I second.
Second by David Perrenchief. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay. You have 14 days to write and file a decision. Then there's a statutory 20-day appeal period. Then you can get your building permit. Again, you could probably get a demolition permit right away if you wanted to do that to move things along.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, application for accessory apartment under zoning bylaw, section 3.6. Property at 156 Gregory Island Road, owner Warren Brown. Okay.
Hi, Brian Stein for the applicant from BDS Design.
Okay.
You probably remember this from a couple months ago. You approved reconstruction of the house, a little bit larger home, non-conforming home. The owner has asked for an accessory apartment in the basement versus his original plan of living space down there for the home. We've spoken with Greg at Board of Health. He's looked at room count and so forth and tentatively approved that based on your approval here. We're just under 900 square feet. Simple one-bedroom apartment, living space, kitchen, outside entry on the south side, and then sliding doors out towards the lake. There's 3 to 4, probably 4 parking spaces on the property, and probably more in the end once he's done with the landscape. So plenty of parking for the one-bedroom apartment along with the home. Really doesn't change the appearance of what you approved prior, except for there's, a stairway that, landscape stair that goes down to a door on the south side, and that's really about the only change to the previous approval.
Okay. Any questions from members of the board? Any questions from members of the public, either in person or on Zoom? And there's nothing in the bylaw about, I guess I may be confusing it with another section where the dwelling had to be a certain age before you could apply. But
Yeah, I think that was taken out when the planning board redid those that accessory apartment bylaw a few years ago.
Okay. I don't want to be living in the past. Okay, it looks really straightforward. Are there any, assuming the board grants the special permit, are there any particular conditions the board would like to impose? Apparently not. And I would entertain a motion to grant the special permit for accessory apartment at 156 Gregory Island Road. Is there a motion?
I motion.
Sorry, I have a
Oh,
quick question.
okay.
It just popped in my mind. Does the apartment need to be separate from the other living space? Like the stairwell is not?
The stairwell, since it's all at ground level, the apartment, there's two entrances out of it, or exits out of it. The stairwell serves the mechanical room, storage in the basement, and obviously
Okay,
the rest
yeah,
of the
okay, I
house.
see, it's blocked off. All right, yep, okay,
Okay.
no problem.
Is there a second?
A second.
Okay. Any further discussion? If not, then I'd entertain, well, you had the motion, it's been seconded. I'm getting a little bit woozy here. No further discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay. You know the drill.
Know the drill.
14 days, 20 days. I'll probably file it next week.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Have a good night.
thank you. Okay, next, continuation of the public hearing for comprehensive permit application submitted by Harbor Light Community Partners for a comprehensive permit pursuant to MGL Chapter 40B for the construction of a 45-unit multifamily housing. The property is located at 466 Highland Street, Lot 1, zoning district RA, and is owned by the Britton Family Trust, LLC. For this, those new to this, this was filed back, I believe, in, well, we had our first hearing back in April. We did apply for safe harbor, which was denied by the state, and then the board took a vote, determined not to further appeal it. So here we are, and I think the purpose of this meeting the major thing will be to discuss with the applicant and among ourselves a schedule going forward, how to deal with this. And you're gonna ask Patrick Reffett, it had some, had you shared the proposed schedule with the other board members, you know, or?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
Generally speaking, this schedule tonight includes an introduction to the project. I would ask in a few minutes that either Benjamin or Kristen Carlson do that for us. We'll talk about some of the 40B project elements that are important to the town, including lottery management elements, local preference, making sure that the units are SHI eligible. We wanted to hear about some of the other ordinary project kinds of components regarding scale, size, design process. I can tell you that the project was before the planning board for about 3 or 4 months last year. There was a lot of project refinement that went into it. The project that is now before the ZBA has a lot of elbow grease that the applicant and the planning board brought forward to incorporate a lot of neighbor and abutter concerns. I think that's an important element. The August the 3rd meeting is to focus on traffic conversations. GHI for the applicant will be discussing traffic generation, how that affects Asbury, Highland, et cetera. The town has a peer reviewer engineering firm called GM2. They have begun their review of the project materials relative to traffic. Let's see, also on September the 7th, we plan to discuss civil and site engineering. That will include wastewater management, drainage, those kinds of things. Again, that will include the town's peer reviewer, which, by the way, the applicant provided the town with $20,000 in payment to allow the town to independently hire a civil engineering firm to review the project on the town's behalf. So that's ongoing. On October the 5th, we do intend to discuss and review architectural and site design elements of the project as well. Clean up after that, and but that's the quick and dirty schedule that we'd like to pursue with the board.
Okay. This doesn't directly related to this project in particular, but I didn't mention it. Obviously, we are in person, but also on Zoom. At this time, the special legislation under the pandemic that allowed for remote meetings and participation expires on July 15th. It's been extended in the past. It's possible to be extended again, but if it's not, that means that going forward, the meetings of the board and participation by the public would be in person, and there wouldn't be Zoom. Just so it's possible it may be, because we know this is an important issue for the town, it may be on the local access TV, but that wouldn't be interactive. So just a heads up, we'll, so. Any comments at this point from members of the board about the proposed schedule? Okay, and is there someone either in person or on Zoom from the applicant that wants to give us an overview of the project, bring us back up to date?
Kristen Carlson here on Zoom from Harbor Light.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Andrew sends his regards. I'm obviously not Andrew. My name is Kristen. I'm the Director of Real Estate Development at Harbor Light. And so the project is, as you know, 45 units of housing, 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. We have worked significantly with the planning board to modify the design in terms of things like dropping the height of the building, reorienting it to the site, away from some of the neighbors, changing the massing, working out the access lane to have the least impact on neighbors across the street. So that was actually a very helpful process to get some initial public comment and be able to incorporate that into the design. I know that there are questions about the lottery and the subsidized housing inventory, so I can just quickly touch on those. So all 45 units would be counted on the subsidized housing inventory, which would bring Hamilton up to roughly about 5.6%. The units would be, there would be a whole marketing plan that would require advertising and outreach, an application period, and then residents are selected by a lottery process, which is literally pulling numbers out of a hat. And from that, we create a wait list, and any further applicants then would go on the wait list. There is, some projects are allowed to do an element of local preference. That's really at the discretion and approval of the state. I think at this point, I would say that we would, would be open to discussion with funders, but that's not something that we could promise at this point.
Okay. Questions from the board about, in general, or about the schedule? Anybody think it seems reasonable? Yeah. Okay. Are there any general questions from members of the public? So there'll certainly be plenty of opportunity as we go forward for particular items, for there to be public input, but in general, if you have something, please go to the podium and introduce yourself and...
Hi, Martin Zeef, 37 Miles River Road. I didn't realize this has been going on for a while in terms of planning. So this is the Zoning Board of Appeals, correct?
Yeah,
And you're doing a 40B project?
right.
And that's going to be a change of zoning for 40B, or is it just a special permit?
No, well, 40B is a section, basically, it's an applicant to, if they meet certain requirements regarding affordability, they may be able to override certain provisions of the zoning bylaw.
I understand. Is that under the purview of the ZBA to grant that override?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is known as a comprehensive permit. It's enabled by state law.
And the state turned down reviewing it, correct?
Say again?
You said something earlier about the state turned down reviewing this?
That's a different matter.
There's a provision that if every town's supposed to have 10% affordable
Oh, I
housing.
understand.
Yeah, okay.
By the way, I'm not against affordable housing.
Okay,
I'm just flat-footed that this whole thing you mentioned has been in the planning department for a while.
And, the town has a production, it's called a housing production plan. And we say we're going to produce so many affordable units per year.
Yeah.
If you do that, if you do that, then somebody can't come in and say, well, we want more affordable units this year. You get a break, basically.
I understand 40B. So I was just,
So,
I always thought it was handled by the planning department, not by the ZBA. ZBA was more for relief.
no, for better or worse, it's us.
That's
It's under the statute, it's the zoning
Again,
board
I'm
of
not against
appeals.
affordable housing. I spoke to Gordon College last week, and they said they're going to be reaching out to neighbors, and we're a butter. And so this, when you mentioned it's been through the planning department for a while, and now it's kicked over to you guys, I was like,
Well, I mean, we certainly work with, we get input from all the town boards, but for purposes of a comprehensive permit, I guess that's why it's comprehensive, we sit in the
I understand.
the seat of the Concom and the Planning Board and some of these other boards.
I've seen ZBA change zoning before. It's just it's more permeable in terms of appeal. The question is, now it sounds like you're building new buildings, because I was told by Gordon College that you guys were going to be
There are two different things
That's
here.
true. Some
We're two
confusion
different
here.
projects.
two different projects.
Yes.
Where's this 40B going?
This is on Highland.
Sorry.
You'll get your chance later.
Okay. Okay. I'm confused too, so, you know.
Sorry about that.
No, no problem, no problem. Any other general questions or comments? Well,
For the Asbury Commons project or for the Gordon Conwell? Okay.
well, if you, okay, please identify yourself and,
My name is John Despic. My wife and I bought a house, I dare say invested in a house on Woodbury Street. And to hear about this project at Gordon College and then find out there's something else taking place involving 45 units.
okay,
And it's just a visceral
well,
reaction.
this isn't, Gordon College has
Understand.
not,
My
Gordon
point-
College has nothing to do
My
with,
point is different, if you just hear me out. My point is that I'm hearing about all of these things all of a sudden, and it would be nice if residents of the town knew what was going on, because it feels, rightly or wrongly, and perception is important, it feels as if we're converting the use of the town, I'm exaggerating, of course, for the sake of making a point, to something other than it was intended for.
I don't mean to denigrate your comment, but all of a sudden, I've been hearing about this for 15 years. I mean, this is not new, so, well, but, I mean, I'm just, okay, any other general comments regarding Asbury Commons? Okay. Since we-
Patrick, there's a handheld, or Bill, excuse me,
Oh.
it's Andy. Daniel Hill has his hand up
Right.
online.
Okay. Identify yourself, please, and,
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
yeah,
Okay, great. My name is Dan Hill. I'm an attorney in Boston. I represent many of the neighbors in the Canterbrook development that directly abuts this project, this 45-unit project on the Britton Farm. We are certainly very concerned about the impacts of this project. I just want to state that for the record. I understand we'll have plenty of opportunities to provide substantive comments. We look forward to those opportunities. We're looking forward to the peer review that's being undertaken in the civil engineering. And I do want to flag particularly a question of waivers, since the waiver list that was provided with the application is only seeking 2 waivers, which is probably a new record for Chapter 40B. I've never seen an application ask for 2 waivers. I think the first task of the peer reviewer should be to evaluate whether this project needs more than 2 waivers. I notice there's no discussion whatsoever about the town's groundwater protection district. This project is smack dab in the middle of the Zone 2 for the wells that are nearby. And there's no discussion, from what I could tell anywhere, about the impacts of this project's wastewater and stormwater systems on the water quality. So we'd very much appreciate the board to look at that issue very closely. This project is within the watershed of those wells, as well as the Ipswich River in general. So again, we look forward to participating further. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight, and we'll be participating with our own experts at future meetings.
thank you. Any other general comments? We do have our, we do have, to have advised the board, Attorney George Pucci here. Is there anything you'd like to say about where things are at this point?
I have nothing to add unless you want to.
Okay. Guess he's not getting paid by the word, so. Thank you.
Ellen has her hand up. Would you like
Okay.
to speak, Ellen?
Oops. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I wanted to know, I know that there are several other, I'd heard there's several other projects that might be in the works of the town. So I wanted to know, is there an overall plan to look to try to get the number of units we need, but who will be contributing what? In other words, the Gordon Conwell, how many units? What would that process look like? The Asbury Common and any others, so that we see how many total units are being proposed in the town, so that there can be sort of a plan around that about prioritizing.
Well,
Thank you.
okay, I think Patrick can fill in here because he's new. As I said, the town has a housing production plan. I think well, you start with the fact that I think the town, to meet the 10% goal that under state law we're supposed to be heading towards, we need something like 200 total units. Is that about correct?
Yeah, about
Okay.
200.
And the town did approve about a year or so ago a second housing production plan that I believe calls for production of 14 units a year
Right.
for, how many, is it a 5-year plan?
Yes.
Just like the Politburo.
It's largely, and Bill is referring to the housing production plan, it's largely a future wish list of what the town would like to see happen. That happens with the help of outside investors and developers that want to do such projects. I can tell you Hamilton has had a number of housing production plans in the past, but for one reason or another, they never had been advanced. I can tell you from my capacity as Director of Planning and Inspections in Hamilton, it's almost as if the town is now being discovered. I think given the fact that land is such a scarce commodity further south to us, the level of demand keeps continuing to go further and further out. For a lot of years, we've found that land here was extraordinarily expensive, and that excluded a lot of projects. I think that, people are reevaluating that, and I think there are more projects that are being proposed. But again, the housing production plan sort of is a future charting of what the town could see that allows it to attain affordable housing a little bit at a time rather than all at once.
So my question is, are there other affordable housing, sorry, I have a cold, are there other affordable housing projects that you're aware of that are also in the works right now or about to become, so that the town could step back and say that there's 150 units that are up, or 100 units, there's 15, 45, like, is there any kind of an overall plan right now as we look at Asbury Commons on how that fits in with other projects that are in the wings?
The only other project that I'm aware of personally right now that's being advanced regarding affordable housing is the Gordon Conwell project that is going to be, I believe, next on the agenda discussion. Outside of that, again, we look to the housing production plan as possibilities, but the Gordon Conwell project that will follow this discussion is the only one that I'm aware of at present.
Bill,
Thank you.
may I make a comment here? I just want to encourage the public that we have all of our past meeting minutes. If you're interested and really passionate about these topics, which many of you are, we have all of our past meeting minutes and the videos online. If you just go to the Hamilton HW Cam, you'll be able to see the April 6th meeting, the March 2nd meeting, the April 12th meeting, the May 4th meeting, and the June 1st meeting. Many of these questions that are asked, and we love the community participation, obviously, but many of the questions that are asked have been answered before. So when you come to these meetings, again, we want to hear your feedback. We are super appreciative of all the engagement, but it's really helpful to streamline these conversations. And especially when we're working with two applications with the same applicant, we want to stay on topic. And right now we're talking about the Asbury, the Highland project, and we'll move on to the Gordon Conwell project after.
I see a person named Amy Clark has her hand up.
Yes, hi, thank you. I just have two questions. One is, I think there's a clock running on the 40B process before the zoning board. Can you tell me if that's the case and how long that clock runs for?
I think it's six months, right? 180 days. I guess.
And you also had that period
Was
with
it-
Safe Harbor, and that got told, so.
So generally, the period, it's 140 days, or 180 days, I'm sorry. That, in this case, the period of time where we applied for Safe Harbor and then were denied and then try to decide if we wanted to appeal that, doesn't count against it. So it's, which that was about, well, at least a month. So we're supposed to make a decision in about 100, within 180 days.
From tonight?
Well, from the date of filing. Now, it's fairly, typical with large, complicated projects in general. I'm not saying that's the case here, that if you're coming down to it, that the applicant had agreed to extend.
Right.
If the board needs the time, but it's 180 days is the baseline.
Okay, thank you. My second question or request maybe is, will you be looking for development and operating financial pro formas from the developer? Is that something that you generally request? And if you don't, can you?
That's part of that's part of the project, although before they got their ticket to ride, so to speak, before they can apply to the zoning board, they have to get basically a ticket from the state that's already reviewed the financials. So we don't get deeply into the financials, and while a zoning board can put conditions on a project, we can't put conditions on it that make it economically unfeasible. So,
Right. Has some board looked at those financials because it does go to the issue of density. And of course, they want to make money. That's probably why they're doing this. But has a board looked at the financials to determine how they impact density?
a town board, not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Is that something that the ZBA will do?
Maybe the finance committee, but that would have to be taken up with them. It's not a requirement under the statute.
Okay,
Attorney Timon has his hand up.
thank you.
Yes, thank you. Ben Timon, counsel for Harbor Light. I just wanted to address Ms. Clark's first question, which, Mr. Chairman, you essentially did, but the period under which DHCD handled the safe harbor request was about 14 days. And with that 14-day pause in the 180-day clock, it brings us to, I don't have the exact date, but it's mid to late October. And so the hearing sessions that have been discussed tonight that are going to be subject matter driven, the third one of those, I believe, is on October 5th. So that's to say that everything that is at least contemplated for the schedule is presently within the statutory period.
Okay.
Just one other note is you have 40 days after the close of a public hearing to then issue the decision.
Okay.
So you need to close in the 6 months, then you have 40 days.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So I think next month we'll hear about traffic. As I remember on Zoom, Andy Phillip makes a good point. If you go to the tape of the April meeting, Mr. Pucci at the outset gave a pretty good summation of how the process works. So if you're interested in doing that, it's maybe worth looking at the HCAM tape on that. It tells you what the process is, what the board can do, what we can't do. So that's it. So that's it. We've set a schedule. This hearing is continued to August 3rd, Wednesday, August 3rd. And just as I said, keep an eye out. It may not be on Zoom. So if you want to be heard, you may have to be here in person. I know the board will be here in person. So
I would vote that.
I would
vote that.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry to interrupt. May I ask a quick question?
yeah, yes.
Is there, you mentioned traffic is going to be on the agenda for August 3rd, but is there a traffic study that's being reviewed?
It is being reviewed presently. I'm happy to send a copy of that to you, Attorney Hill, if you're interested.
Oh, absolutely. And is it possible to post that on the town's website so that the rest of the public can also access these documents?
I will check and see.
Great, thank you.
I'm sorry, George, I didn't quite, you were,
Yeah, you want to just move formally.
oh, move, okay, yeah, okay. I would accept a motion to continue the hearing on the Asbury Commons 40B to August 3rd, 2022.
Motion moved.
Is there a second?
I second.
Further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you all for your attendance.
Thank you.
Next, application for the property owned by Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary, Inc., located at 130 Essex Street, zoning districts R1B and R1A, Assessors Map 64, Lot 5. The applicant is Harbor Light Community Partners, Inc., 283 Elliott Street, Beverly. Applicant is seeking a variance from the lot area requirements in zoning bylaw section 4.1 in order to create 3 lots pursuant to zoning bylaw section 5.3.2.1 and findings of fact under zoning bylaw section 5.2 for a change of use from student housing to multifamily dwelling, and under zoning bylaw section 5.3.1.2 in order to construct 3 additions to the existing multifamily dwellings which have historically been used for student housing. I believe we have a representative of the applicant here. If you'd identify yourself, please, and then tell us what you're proposing.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Miranda Samasco from Glovsky and Glovsky and Beverly, representing Harbor Light Community Partners. Also, on behalf of Harbor Light tonight, we have Kristen Carlson, Director of Real Estate Development, who's joining on Zoom. Thad Samasco, who is here, is the principal of SV Design and the project architect. And we also have Rebecca Brown, I believe, joining us remotely. She is the traffic consultant from Greenman Peterman, Inc., that has prepared the preliminary traffic memos associated with the request tonight. I would like to note a couple of things at the outset. Unfortunately, I'm hearing our team had anticipated that we would be presenting, we would have an ability to present digitally on the screen, which I'm hearing is not the case. We'll do our best to go through the project application without the benefit of visuals. I apologize for that, but we'd like to proceed with an overall description if the board so allows.
Please. And is this something, I mean, is this, do we not have this capacity in general, or is it just?
We have a new setup. I don't know what's connected to the screen and the projector to accommodate for that. Yeah.
That's fine. In the past, I've come and plugged in over there, and I apologize. I didn't realize what that setup is.
Possibly if Rebecca has some of the site plans or the site maps, I could do a screen share with her. And
yes, I do have that. I actually was just about to ask that question, if I could share Thad's presentation.
That would be great. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. It looks like I'll have to be allowed to do that. It's letting me know the host has disabled it, so. All right.
Robin made arrangements with us to do this part of it. Okay. Susan.
Well, I guess so we've got somebody from your office. Yeah, so I guess you might as well.
Is this coming up for 40B though?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, not at this point.
All right, need me for it?
No.
Okay.
No, okay. Okay.
Thank you. You might want to recognize that Robin's here.
All right, can everyone see the screen? Or see the presentation up on the screen?
Yes.
Okay.
That's great. Thank you, Rebecca.
Rebecca, could I mention that Robin Stein is our town council for this specific project? She's now on the call with us via Zoom. Thank you.
Yeah, can you slide that up on your?
So it's a little hard for me to hear in the room. So just let me know when I need to advance.
You're at 111% if you go out. Try that.
There you go.
It's fit to screen right now. Does it look like something's cut off?
Yeah, the bottom is cut off, Rebecca.
That's the projector.
But I think it's the projector.
Okay.
I think,
Does that help a little bit?
yeah, let's see how we do. I think that for the most part, if folks will bear with us, this this should allow us to get through it. Thank you for getting us through the technical difficulties.
Stop.
Just raise the building.
Perfect. All right.
Been there and done that.
So I also want to just make a note that Andrew DeFranza, the executive director of Harbor Light, sends his regrets for not being here on the opening hearing. This was a scheduling difficulty that unfortunately cannot be avoided, but he looks forward to joining the group at the next public hearing. So our plan this evening is to provide an overview of the requests before you that were set forth in the public notice. That will include, after my running through the project, a review of the architectural plans by Thad, and we will follow with a brief summary of the traffic findings from GPI that Rebecca Brown will give us. As an introductory matter, just a couple of notes. One is that earlier today, we submitted a supplemental traffic letter to Mary Ellen and to Patrick. I realize the board won't have the benefit of that tonight, but Rebecca can speak in summary fashion to the change that was made. And I also have copies for the board available.
I do need to point out to the board that we haven't begun a peer review process yet. We're awaiting funding from the applicant for that. At an appropriate time, they will provide it to us. I've already obtained a proposal from a multidisciplinary engineering company to do the peer review, but we're not going to be able to consummate that until we have funding provided to us.
Thank you. And I'll just provide these. Those are the 8 copies.
Thanks.
Okay, so I know that all here are very familiar with this site. It's the Gordon Conwell campus at 130 Essex Street. It's been the home to the Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary, which is a nonprofit educational corporation, since approximately 1970. And it is occupying what is now a 102-acre campus, the bottom portion of which is shown on this slide here. It is bounded by Essex Street, Woodbury Street, and Bridge Street. Our portion of the site is highlighted here in outlined in red, and it is basically outlining one of the features of the project, which is to divide the existing student housing buildings off onto separate lots, which can be then conveyed. As folks I think are aware, the seminary has faced a declining in-person enrollment over the years and has been looking for ways to raise funding. And seminary, over a period of several months, negotiated an agreement with Harbor Light to sell 6 of the existing apartment buildings that are currently used for graduate student and family housing, and with the intention that Harbor Light would be in a position to convert those existing student apartments to rental apartments. As folks have heard from prior proceedings this evening, Harbor Light, but for the purpose of getting into the record, Harbor Light Community Partners is a nonprofit developer focused solely on developing affordable housing, and it has built a stellar reputation across the North Shore, and beyond in carrying out these projects in a way that it really seeks to be cooperative with the communities and to make these projects a win-win for everybody. If this application is successful, Harbor Light would purchase the 6 buildings in up to 3 separate phases or lots. And then the proposal, as we'll hear tonight, is to update the existing apartments without changing the number of units that are already there, and to offer them as rentals with a minimum of 25% of the units being rented as affordable housing. That 25% would then qualify the entire number of units, which is 210, for inclusion on the town's subsidized housing inventory. For the purposes of 40B, as we heard in the prior proceedings, there's approximately 200 units needed for the town to reach its 10%, and this project would satisfy that requirement for the town in its entirety. I believe. That's my understanding. I think the project with that backdrop really offers a unique opportunity for the town to substantially increase the diversity of its existing housing stock by adaptively reusing existing buildings instead of building new ones, bringing those buildings onto the tax rolls. Currently, they are not. Minimizing negative impacts to neighbors by because these projects are existing, there are minimal impacts on open space and other environmental resources, and it really is a very unique opportunity for the town, and we hope that the board takes that into consideration this evening. The project includes, and the relief requested includes 3 main components. First, as we have here, is the proposed division of the apartments from the campus. And these red outlines would be separate lots. As you can see, they are, and I'll show you more fully on the next slide in a moment, but they are designed to be as compact as possible around those buildings, so thereby leaving the remainder of the campus intact, whether that's for continued use by Gordon or another nonprofit or institutional user, or if there's a creative rezoning opportunity here should the seminary decide to sell the property in total. The proposed layout here for those existing buildings really should not interfere with any of that. And Rebecca, if you could switch to the next slide, please. Thank you. So this is the actual lot layout plan that is part of the board's package. I realize it's a little bit hard to read, but we'll do our best to get you through it. This was prepared by the civil engineer, Hancock Associates, and it really provides the same general lot layout. Here you can see lot AB, excuse me, having frontage on Woodbury Street and consisting of the buildings known as A and B. We were not very creative in these lots here. And that would be proposed to be taken down possibly as a single phase or combined with Lot CD. In any event, Lot CD, which you see here, does not have independent frontage on Woodbury, but would be approved as a lot that could only be combined into common ownership if it were conveyed with the ownership of Lot AB, so that the lots would merge and there would be frontage for both of them from Woodbury Street. The third lot or phase would be Lot EF. Again, the same concept. There is frontage along the Woodbury Street, and the lot has been designed compactly to circle the existing buildings and their parking areas. I should note here that it's important to emphasize that part of the deal with Gordon is that when these lots are acquired, they would be acquired with easements to continue to use the existing access and egress roads. So there is no change contemplated by this project in how cars enter or exit from the campus. That would all remain the same. Similarly, there would be cross easements and actually a shared use agreement with respect to the private wastewater treatment center that is currently owned by the college. There would be an agreement for these, for a separate entity to own that treatment center with shared rights between the college and Harbor Light. So as members of the board will appreciate, we obviously need to go to the planning board for approval of these A&R lots that are proposed. But before we can do that, we need to request from this board a dimensional variance from what is already a non-conforming lot area for this property. And to explain that, the existing campus as a whole consists of about 102 acres of land. That compares to roughly 193 acres that would be required to actually satisfy the minimum lot area requirement for dwellings in the R1B district. That requirement is 40,000 square feet per unit. It's obviously designed for single-family homes, which these buildings did not have to comply with because they were constructed as educational buildings and therefore essentially exempt from zoning under what's known as the Dover Amendment. So in all other regards except the lot area, the buildings conform with dimensional requirements now, and they will continue to do so when the lots are divided. But obviously, we're taking 210 units on what is now 102 acres of land, and we're changing that to 210 units on approximately 12 and a half acres of land. So that requires a variance under Chapter 40A and the town's bylaw. Secondly, the second real factor, and you can start to see this here, and Thad's going to describe it in more detail, is that Harbor Light proposes to build some small additions between the pairings of buildings. These additions will not contain new units. We're not increasing the density that already exists, but the connector additions, as Thad's pointing out there, will provide additional amenity space for the residents, making them more accessible to residents and also giving them more amenities. And we think that that is a reasonable way to make sure that this is a quality development for folks who are living there. That portion of the project, being new construction, will obviously involve site plan review from the planning board. But as a preliminary matter, before we even can get there, we are asking for a Section 6 finding from this board to allow proposed additions to what will become non-conforming buildings once they are not used for educational purposes. Well, actually, Rebecca, if you could go to the next slide, please. This is just a sort of a summary of what this would look like. Lot AB would include approximately 2¼ acres, a roughly 8,200 square foot connector building is proposed. Lot CD would include another 4¼ acres plus or minus, with another 9,600 square foot connector building. And Lot EF would include about 5.33 acres with another 8,400 square feet of connector building. The final aspect of the project, of course, is what is being proposed as a change in use. The change of use, I would suggest, is a nominal change in use. The buildings are currently used as multifamily residences for students and their families. And the only change that is really contemplated here is that the same multifamily buildings will be rented to families who are not students. But that change, we are asking the board to bless by way of a Section 6 finding. Again, the theory being that now these buildings are allowed because they are educational. However, when the educational use ends, they will become non-conforming buildings, and therefore the board has the power to authorize the change under Section 6 and under the bylaw. That's laying out, hopefully in not too complicated a fashion, what is being proposed and what is being asked in terms of relief. And unless the board has questions, I'd turn it over to Thad to walk you through what is proposed in terms of actual new construction.
Well, I'm sure we'll have questions, but let's get the overview, and if that's okay with the board.
Good evening, everybody. Thad Samasco, SV Design in Beverly. Apologize for the slow start here, but hopefully we can get through this pretty quickly. I'll just give you an overview of what we're thinking about architecturally. I know you'll dig into the details further along in the process. Next slide, please, Rebecca. So as Miranda mentioned, the buildings are paired. There's 3 sites, and each site has a pair of buildings that are relatively close one to the other, but not connected. And the only changes to the volume of the building will be to make these connections. The actual buildings themselves, the layouts within the building, the unit sizes and all that are going to be unchanged. They're a little tired on the inside, but otherwise, we're not really changing any of the unit count or layout. But we are adding some amenity spaces, as Miranda mentioned, in these connectors, which we'll get into some further detail shortly. Next, please. The buildings have been well maintained. They're built solidly. It's just a different era. You can see on the bottom right there, to enter the building, you go up half a flight, and then you end up going down half a flight to a lower level and up half a flight to the second level. They're all 3 stories. But have no accessibility. And I think as you know, college campus buildings, some of the amenities that probably happened off in other parts of the campus. And with families moving here, we think that it's important that that there be a little bit more amenity space, which I'll show you what that means in a minute. Part of it is, frankly, just to have plain handicapped person accessibility to all parts of all 3 floors of all 6 buildings. And that I'll show you how that works in a second. Next, please. So this is A and B, and so the connector between A and B, you see here on the ground floor has what's called the lounge. It's basically a common area where you might have, grandma's birthday party. We always keep trash within the building and compact it. Each floor has a trash chute, so we have a compactor room. We have an elevator, as I mentioned, and because of the ground level changes, there's a vestibule you'll come in, and depending on which building it is, you find your way up to a floor that you can then access both buildings from. So there will not be that issue of encountering stairs. You can visit your friends on any of the floors, and visitors can come. On the ground, each of these connectors has a laundry that's used commonly for both sides. There will be one on each level. An office to manage the facility, and those kinds of things are all included. So that's the ground floor of this AB connector. Next, please. As we go up to the second floor, we're able to reduce, you can see here that with that shadow of the roof below, we're able to reduce the area some, but still maintaining the, what we need for trash rooms, electrical rooms, laundries, and elevator, and so forth. And then the next floor, please, Rebecca, is basically more of the same. So the stairwells within each of the buildings get removed, and corridors are made so that there's a full connection, basically creating a community between between A and B, weather-tight connection for both. That's again accessible. So that's a typical approach, is the buildings are generally square one to the other. This one's probably the neatest of the three combinations, where it's almost a cube that's put there. And next slide, please. And it's a little hard to see, but I think on the bottom you can see the idea is to take the brick that was used in the main building and the roof form. So this piece, this is a new connector piece here. So there's a strategy of, there's a sort of a glassy kind of link between the existing building and the new, and the connector pieces. We're using the brick, we're using the same materials, same kind of roof pitches, same kind of windowing. So this should feel like it has just been, you know, it's to the extent that these designs are reasonably timeless and classic, we're basically following that with our new designs. Next, please. So the CD is connection is similar in concept, just different layout because of how the buildings, you know, fit one to the other. You go through this quickly. Next, please. So here, same general elements, but just a different way of making the connection happen between the two buildings. Each of these buildings, we've looked at the general approach of where the grade is relative to the first floor and so forth, and made that all work. Next, please, Rebecca. So as you work up, again, up to the upper levels, these things get reduced a little bit in volume. They're all lower than the existing building. I think they're in the 32, 33 feet range, where the existing building is pretty much at the 35-foot level. Next, Rebecca. And the third floor goes the same thing, same trash chutes, same amenity spaces, places, you know, quiet place to read, or maybe kids can do their homework in a common room kind of thing. Gets put into buildings like this typically. Next, please. And for E and F, these are the two newer buildings. I think there might be a picture of them next. They're three-story buildings as well. These are pretty much entered directly on grade. They do not have an elevator. That would be something that is included now in the link piece that we're doing. And we took the same gable form you see on the far left, the three-story with the gable and the roof and the sloped roof and the windowing pattern, and use that same pattern in our connector. Connector in this case is a little hard to see because it's if you've been to the site, there's two faces of building, and then tucked back in the diagonal corner is where the connecting piece would end up going. Next, please. So the parking lot in this case, the entry is actually on the upper left on the screen here. So there's an entrance point. Again, the elevator, trash, mail is handled, and then the connection's made. This is a longer, more slender connection. And as you go up a floor, you'll see, maybe next slide, please, Rebecca. You'll see that some of the mass is dropped off, and we kind of string out the necessary rooms that connect. Again, the two existing buildings are unchanged. We're simply just connecting in terms of their volume. We're just connecting them. We will, of course, we'll clean up the interior of the units, but the layouts are good. The unit sizes are good for this kind of market. The affordable housing we've done, they kind of fall into the DHCD guideline for unit size. Next, please. And that's the third floor. Next, please. So here, the design is, again, this is all new here. But you can see using those gable forms, using the brick, and then the strategy of separating and linking the buildings. I think that's all I have. I think, Rebecca, you may be ready for your traffic. Thank you.
All right. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Awesome.
Yes.
Yeah, so we did put together an initial traffic study, and I know that you also just got an updated traffic study from us, or an updated trip generation assessment. And I can very briefly explain to you what the difference in the two was. When we did the original traffic study, We estimated the trips that are currently being generated by the existing student housing development, and then we compared that to the trips that would be generated by the proposed development once it is converted to family housing. And when we estimated existing traffic, we did it based on number of units instead of bedrooms, assuming that each one was a single bedroom unit. So we've since updated that, as many of the existing units do contain multiple bedrooms. So this figure here is showing you that, that updated information. So in terms of how much additional traffic we would anticipate this project would generate on the study area roadways immediately around the site, during the morning peak hour, we would expect that it would generate roughly 31 additional vehicle trips on the roadways. The majority of that obviously being exiting traffic for people that may be headed out to work in the mornings or headed out to drop kids at school. In the afternoon, it's actually a slight reduction in traffic as compared to the existing student housing development. It's roughly 10 vehicle trips lower in the afternoon peak hour. And then on a Saturday during that midday peak, oh, sorry, I don't know why that just popped up on me. On Saturday during that midday peak is an increase of about 20 vehicle trips, and about half of that is entering versus exiting. When we distribute that traffic out over the study area roadways, which included Essex Street, Bridge Street, and Woodbury Street, the maximum increase that we would anticipate seeing on any of those study area roadways would be 12 vehicle trips, which is roughly one additional vehicle every 5 minutes on any of the roadways. So during some time periods, it would be less than that, but there would be a maximum of 12 vehicle trips additional during any one peak hour of the day, as compared to what you're seeing out there now on the roadway. Based on that limited increase in vehicle trips on the roadways, we don't anticipate there would be any significant impact to traffic operations on those study area roadways. So the next kind of step in our study was to look at safety of those roadways. So we reviewed collision history for each of the driveway intersections with Pew Lane and Graham Way, for all of the internal intersections within the seminary itself, as well as each of those driveways meets Essex Street, Woodbury, and Bridge Street as well. And we looked at a 5-year period extending from 2015 to 2019. So we're looking at pre-COVID conditions for what was happening for crashes out there when there was much more activity going on. And what we found was that of all of the study area intersections, there was a maximum of 3 crashes that occurred at any of those intersections across that 3-year period. So an average of 1 or fewer per year at any of the intersections, which really doesn't represent a safety issue. They're well below the statewide average for crash rates at all of the study area intersections. And the majority of those crashes, all but one of them, actually occurred when it was either raining out or when it was snowy conditions and involved a single vehicle leaving the roadway during all of those crashes. So the other component that we looked at was sight lines coming in and out of each of the roadways. So coming off of Graham Way onto Essex Street, coming out of Pew Lane onto Woodbury, and then also coming out onto Bridge Street. And then we also looked at all of the sight lines at each of the individual driveways as they meet all the internal roadway connections too. And what we found was that in all cases, the study or the sight lines either approaching along the roadway, and so if you're coming from the point of view of a driver that's approaching the driveway along the roadway, or from the point of view of a driver that is exiting one of the driveways out onto the main line and trying to see oncoming traffic. So for both of those, the sightlines well exceeded AASHTO's recommendations for safe operations. So based on that, we did not see any significant safety issues that would result from the additional traffic that would be generated from this development. And I know that that information that we provided is soon going to be peer reviewed. So we'll look for peer review comments when those are available. And with that, I can turn it back to Miranda.
Great. Thanks, Rebecca. I think that recognizing that members of the board and members of the public may have questions, and recognizing that there will be some discussions about peer review and what this board wants to see in terms of peer review. That concludes our planned presentation for this evening, wanting to give everybody an opportunity for questions and discussion.
Any questions from the board at this point on this? I guess this is, I'm curious why you're going this route instead of the 40B route. I mean,
That's a fair question. I think as this board can appreciate, as well as the planning board, the 40B route is a time-consuming process that can take years to get through. I think this is a unique opportunity. Gordon isn't necessarily willing to stay in the deal for that length of time. And we feel that this is really a unique situation where the buildings already exist in essentially the same use, and that the relief can be granted here relatively expeditiously, particularly expeditiously as compared to a 40B.
What was the unit count?
There are 210 units.
And 25%, only 25% of that can be affordable.
A minimum of 25% are planned to be affordable. Is if Harbor Light crosses the 25% threshold, all 210 units, regardless of their affordability levels, will be included on the town's SHI.
Where's that?
Similar to a 40B project.
they would count as.
Yes.
So, yeah, that's, I mean, I don't, that's, whether that makes sense or, but that's the law. And,
yeah.
Can you clarify the difference between this route and the 40B route?
How long do you have? No.
Think of this.
No, well, both, I guess, well, you know, if you cut to the chase, either way, it's, this board would decide it. It's both the zoning board is the permit granting authority. 40B, if for the Asbury Commons, is a statute that essentially allows, in the case of affordable housing, allows an applicant to override local zoning to an extent. This is, you know, the procedure that they're going under, the proposal, it gets them to the same place, but, you know, it's different legal standards, and it's just a kind of a different process. But in the sense of who would make the decision, it doesn't matter. Although I guess in this case, they actually, they also there are other boards that they have to go to the planning board, whereas under the 40B, we would act for all of the things. So, okay. Any general questions about this? I mean, we're going to be getting into the details over the next some period of time, but any?
Bill, this is Andy. I have a question for Harbor Light. I'd love to understand more around the substantial hardships that you believe were found on this property. You talked about structure, but I'm curious if you found anything around soil conditions, shape, or topography.
I can answer that. I think that the hardship really is pinpointed to the structures, which the bylaw and the statute recognize as grounds for hardship. The fact is, we have existing buildings that have been in place as multifamily buildings, and if they are not used for educational purposes, and the board does not allow some relief by way of variance for the lot area requirements, then essentially these buildings are being mothballed as non-usable, as rentals, as multifamily. And I think that is a hardship to the current owner or to any prospective owner, and without providing any substantial benefit, which is another part of the hardship test.
Okay, if you'd come up to the microphone and identify yourself, please.
I'm Nancy Dashkin, 215 Woodbury Street, and a butter. I just have a couple of comments and questions. One comment from the explanation of the traffic pattern indicated that the driveway off Woodbury Street was a two-way driveway, and it is one-way in, which markedly reduces the amount of traffic moving from Woodbury Street into what's now Gordon Conwell Seminary. So I would be interested to know whether the egress changes and those driveways become two-way, because that would have a definite impact on the traffic on Woodbury Street. Secondly, Woodbury Street is very narrow, doesn't have sidewalks, and any traffic adds to the danger. So that was one thing I noticed with respect to the data presented by the traffic summary. The second issue really has to do with a little small comment about the septic system that would be owned and maintained by a separate company that wouldn't be Harbor Light Community Partners. The septic system, which is literally on the Woodbury Street side of the property, has been a problem for as long as there have been students and housing on that property. And unless someone does a detailed study of the number of residents that would be in those rental units and recognizes that the current system is not adequate, that could become a real problem with respect to environmental issues, water drainage, and all sorts of other things. And as a butter, very close to where that septic system now exists, I can attest, having lived there for more than 30 years, that it is not adequate now. And knowing many, many people who have lived at the seminary, I also know that there have been declining numbers of families and people in those apartments. So looking at the numbers and making generalizations based upon the number of units versus the number of people that have been in there doesn't necessarily give an accurate picture or give us as residents and abutters a sense of what would happen if this were to become a multi-family residential complex. And I'm not opposed to it being affordable or otherwise. What I'm opposed to is what seems to be kind of a hodgepodge. And third and last is, what about the rest of the seminary that's in the middle of this? Whoever buys that portion of the property would become abutters. Now it's Gordon Conwell, and they're interested in selling it. So I think that's another issue. What happens to the old building and the library and everything that's literally on the hill that for many of our children and local residents is great for sleigh riding and all sorts of other things when you have these lots carved out owned by someone else? So I just wanted to bring that up. as a local resident and a concerned resident, that if this is going to be done, it's got to be done completely and comprehensively so that there isn't a little gap that will ultimately cause all sorts of problems. Thank you.
Okay. I'll just, thank you for your comments. I don't want to get deep into the weeds here, but both this board and the planning board, if they do site plan review, back in the good old days, it was one-stop shopping. The zoning board did site plan review too, but anyway, not that I'm bitter. But, we don't, none of the boards have to take what's presented as the final project, and we can impose conditions and changes, and all of this will be addressed, or can be addressed going forward. To your third point, I guess, as a citizen, with my citizen hat, I agree. To a large extent, the Board of Appeals would kind of have to deal with the project presented to us by an applicant. But I think in the overall process, as I said, there's the planning board. They and other town boards are better equipped to deal with the macro picture. So, the next person, this gentleman, if you'd go to the, identify yourself.
Excuse me, this is Robin Stein from Bylaw. Is it possible to take down the screen share so that folks on the remote side can see the speakers better? Thank you.
Mr. Chair, do you want me to address the questions that were posed, or hold them to the end?
Geez, I thought I dealt with it perfectly. No, go ahead.
I think just a couple quick clarifications. First of all, with respect to the egress onto Woodbury Street, I know that Rebecca's report is very clear. There are no changes proposed in what currently exists. So I didn't hear her say otherwise, but I think, Rebecca, if you can just back me up on that, your report is clear, there's no change.
That's correct. And yeah, the report does reference an entrance-only driveway on Woodbury. And I think the comment probably came up because when I was describing the sight lines, I had noted the difference between the sight line of someone coming out of a driveway, and I did show Woodbury as the example, but it is entrance only at Woodbury. That is correct, and we are not changing that.
Okay, thank you. And I think regarding the sewage treatment plant, it would, when I said separate entity, I'm sorry if that was confusing. It will be a separate legal entity with ownership. Some would be probably joint between the seminary and Gordon. It would be binding on successors.
Ma'am, please, everybody, if you direct your comments through the chair, and it has to be, you have to be at the podium so that it gets recorded. Okay. So, and I think, as I said, these details, we or another board, the planning board, will get into it, but I'd like to keep it at the high level at this point. There'll be plenty of opportunity for input, so.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, identify yourself, please.
Rick Mitchell, 36 Rock Maple Ave, Hamilton. Also, just for the record, member of the planning board. Also chair of the Hamilton Development Corporation, and a member of the Gordon Theological Seminary Task Force that has been tasked to work with the seminary over the last several years to try and build a relationship with them and determine what would happen to that piece of property. I don't represent any of those boards. I'm speaking as a citizen, but I also have a 20 years background in land use planning with the board and communications with the seminary and development of affordable housing in town. The latest one that just opened up, Willow Flats, with 9 units of affordable housing that will, and because it is 25%, all 18 units will count towards the town's HSI. So I want to take this a little bit to a higher level and actually reflect what a previous speaker mentioned about a more comprehensive plan. I want to speak to what we're actually looking here at. We've got a seminary in desperate financial straits. For the last several years, they've been trying multiple tasks to try and address their financial stress. They cut their budget by $4 million. They sold off acreage on Bridge Street for $2 million. They're trying to sell off, and they've been working on this project that's before your board for about 3 years. During this time, they've had little communication with the town, and what they have presented to the Gordon Theological Seminary, the task force, is piecemeal plans that keeps looking at selling off bits and pieces of the seminary, but there's no comprehensive plan. They haven't come forward to the town or anybody else with a plan that says, well, we plan to use this property in the following ways. In fact, at a planning board meeting where they were presenting several weeks ago, I mentioned the fact that we've seen and heard many different plans, and I said it's pretty confusing. And they said, if you're confused, we're confused too. We don't know whether we're going to keep part of the land and use it. We don't know whether we're going to sell it. We don't know what we're going to do with the property. Yet they announced they're selling the property. Now, really, strategically, do you do that? Do you think about saying, I'm going to sell a property without knowing how you're going to dispose of it? So what they've already done is randomly chopped up this piece of property. We're looking at a proposal right now to do that. They're looking to jettison that housing, but they don't know what they're going to do with this. So they're looking for a specific variance to jettison this piece of property. But what this variance lacks, and I know there may be more detail coming, is critically important details on who will occupy the buildings, specific details on timing of the development and the occupancy, sources of financing, and the impacts on the town. We don't know that. And this is important information that the board should know about before they make any kind of decision. Selling off the campus piecemeal compromises the potential future development for its highest and best use as a complete campus. By selling off these pieces, they actually are lowering the value of this, and they're putting the town in a position of having to react to whatever comes. And we're not a part of that discussion about how that should be developed in its highest and best use to benefit of them and to the town. There's no, as I mentioned, no coherent campus-wide plan or coordination with the town on proposed what is a massive residential project. This will be the single largest residential project in the town's history. It's going from a student housing project to multifamily rental units. There's nothing comparable in the town. And putting 210 units in a rural setting, these are multifamily, not students. Students stay on campus. Multifamily go outside, and they'll be all over town. That's great to the extent that they might stimulate business, but we're talking families. And I really kind of question that traffic study about there's only going to be a few number of trips. Wait a minute, the students who are there don't leave when they get out of class. They stay on campus in the housing. Multifamily housing is going to create, I believe, much more significant traffic than that study relates to. We don't know what the negative impacts are going to be on the town in terms of infrastructure, public safety, water resources, the school system, and the town's finances. There's no discussion, no analysis of that. if you're going to make that kind of decision, I would think as a board, you would want to know that, and as a citizen, I would want to know that. Secondly, I can relate to you as the planning board. The planning board, if they're coming to us for an A&R, that's an approval not required. If they meet the setbacks, we have to approve it. So it's not like the planning board is going to delve into this and say, you can't do it, or you have to modify it. So, and the key point here is, since the seminary has not come to the table, and in fact, we have not met with any representative. They have provided us, when we meet with them on the planning board, a retired vice president and a kindly lawyer who lives in town who's working pro bono for them. We haven't heard from the president, the chief financial officer, or any serious officers about what's going on, and neither have you. I question how they can ask for a change of use when they're not showing up before your board. They've got an applicant who's got an option on the property, and this development is going to go supposedly over a 10-year period in phases, but we don't know when, we don't know how, they don't know how either. They don't know how they're going to finance it, they don't know how they're going to build it. They've already got Asbury they're asking to. They said that's going to take them 5 years to build. They've got major projects in Beverly that are $6 million over budget. And they've got a project in Wenham that was approved 3 years ago that they haven't done anything with. So I question their capability of actually building this. So unless and until they come to you as a board with a coherent plan about what they're going to do with that entire piece of property and how this fits in it, I don't see how you can approve it. And lastly this is the only point of leverage this town has to get this seminary to sit down and talk to us in an intelligent, coherent fashion about how they're going to dispose of this property and get the highest and best use for themselves and this town by working with the planning board and the ZBA and the Board of Selectmen and the FinCom. So you are our last and best hope to get them to the table to actually talk about how we can develop this jointly in a cooperative fashion to the benefit of themselves and to the town. Thank you.
You got a little lower than 30,000 square feet, but thanks for your input. So, okay. I think this gentleman is next, and then we'll...
Hi, Jake Fumara, 139 Essex Street. So I'm across the street from the main entrance. I think I liked a lot of what Rick said, that this really is a chance to get Gordon Conwell to sort of come to the table. Someone at Gordon Conwell sent a letter, I don't know if anyone else got it, saying that we could meet with, I don't know if it was the president or vice president of the school for a week in the summer, so I'll definitely take him up on that. I think that I give Andrew and his team a ton of credit. I've been in this town for 9 years. I've known Andrew for 8 of them for a bunch of various reasons in different places that I've lived around town. Andrew is a great affordable housing developer. I think that someone asked, what's the difference between how they're doing this now versus 40B? With this, they're asking, with 40B, they can tell you what they want. And it's not that you lose all your rights, but this is a much gentler and nicer way to go about it. So I do appreciate that, and I think it is the way to go about it. The problem is, it feels a little bit like Harbor Light's getting used by the school, and when you look at just pure numbers, right, to me a variance is a nasty, dirty word because it includes the word hardship. Proving a hardship is supposed to be a really, really high bar to break. When you looked at, there's 102 acres. If you take the 210 units, the zoning says you need 1 unit per 40,000 square feet. You get to 1 unit per, you guys probably know this math better than me, 1 unit per like 20,000 square feet with the 210 units. With what they're asking for, you're getting to 1 unit per 3,000 square feet. So unclear why Gordon Conwell can't give them more land for whatever price they're paying. I know that you use the word financial hardship, which, I don't know, that kind of seems like an oxymoron to me because we don't know the deal that what you're paying Gordon Conwell or anything like that, but it just all feels premature without knowing what Gordon's going to do there with everything else. If you were coming and saying, we're looking for 210 units on the 102 acres, that would seem like a reasonable request that everyone should talk about. I have no doubt, right? I hear your concerns about the sewer treatment and all that. There's gonna be a peer review. You have to trust the process a little bit that that's going to go through, and that will get worked out. The problem is, I don't know how you grant a variance when the hardship is, when it's making it so much more non-conforming without knowing what's happening everywhere else. So, you know, and it seems premature that we're even having this meeting before the peer review happened, but understand that the meetings come up and happen. But like I said, it feels a lot like Andrew and his team are getting used a little bit by Gordon Conwell to just get some money in the door. I don't necessarily hate the use, because I do agree that part of that use is there. I think more study needs to happen, but it's impossible to even evaluate or talk about this beyond just saying, like, just looking at the dimensional hurdle and thinking that this board could get past the dimensional hurdle. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, any other general, very general questions or comments? In terms of the details, we're gonna get into them, but I think this gentleman was next.
And Bill, it looks like someone online has their hand up as well.
I'm sorry, Andrea.
It looks like someone online has their hand up. There's no name, it's iPad 2.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Wait a minute, please. Marnie, I did recognize this gentleman first. Identify yourself, please.
Thank you. My name is Fred Venn, 131 Essex Street, directly across from the main entrance to Gordon Conwell Seminary. I sent a letter in, which is published on the website now. Do you want me just to read the letter, or just
it's
cut
part
it
of the
down?
public record. I mean, I've seen the letter.
Right.
I guess I'd prefer you didn't read the letter.
Fine. So then just make a couple general comments, if that's all right, in the interest of time. I basically totally agree with what Rick and Jake said. Rick in particular knows far more about all the ins and outs of this than I do. It just feels to me very premature, and this is much too big a project in my mind for the town of Hamilton. I'd much rather say to the trustees of the seminary, look, come to us with a comprehensive plan for the entire seminary ownership, and the town would consider that. I could see things, for example, here like buildings that would be designed for teachers and municipal employees that would be a magnet for that sort of person, provide a place for them to live that's close to where they work. We have a shortage of that. We have a shortage of retiree housing. It seems to me like some kind of creative planning process could make a much better use of the land. This is a unique opportunity to think carefully through this whole process and bring the seminary, along, whether they want to do that at this point or not. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Marnie.
Yes, Marnie Crouch, 145 Woodland Mead. I am both chair of the Affordable Housing Trust and the Planning Board. I just have some very general comments because I think the members of who are attending in person have made some very excellent points. And I applaud the effort to develop affordable housing on the site, as well as market rate housing, which I think could have some benefit. That said, there were some key words here that I found compelling, and those are premature and comprehensive. This site will eventually be developed. I think that the seminary will recognize that the sale of the property is in its interest, even if it were to attempt to retain some small portion of it. That being said, it doesn't make sense to analyze the traffic at this particular time for potentially the development of 6 buildings if there were to be some type of, just by way of example, a biotech company that repurposed some of the larger buildings on the site, or even constructed a new building, generating considerably more traffic than a potential residential development. And the same could be said for the septic system. So to Rick's point, we need a lot more information, and I think to proceed without a comprehensive plan for the site would be potentially a very bad mistake for the future of the town and its potential revenue stream. And as we all know, that's a significant concern for the town. So I am just reiterating some of the points that were already made, but I will make one other comment. It is my understanding, and we were not given the benefit of the option agreement as part of the package, but that the seminary had reserved the right to retain buildings E and F. So I don't know if anyone can corroborate that or not. But my understanding from speaking with Andrew DeFranza is that the seminary was going to retain the option of withholding buildings E and F from the potential development by Harbor Light.
Thank you. Okay, anything else? Are there any hands up? No, I guess not. Okay.
Sorry, can I just, sorry, I wanted to end, I forgot to ask you a question. And this is a question for the board. With knowing that this property was originally developed under this Dover amendment, if they were to carve off these pieces of it, could the seminary go forward and develop more under the Dover amendment and continue to, so we give a variance, right? Because the town gives a variance to carve off these units, which were only developed under the Dover amendment. And then they can just go develop more. And does it set a precedent for what happens in the town? I tried to read about this Dover amendment before this meeting, but I was just confused by it. I didn't know if you could educate us on it at all.
How long do you have? Theoretically, they could. I mean, the Dover Amendment, it says educational uses. So it's not just dorms. So yeah, if they got a pile of money, I mean, they could put up a gym or something, anything that's ancillary to their educational use. So yes, theoretically, any educational institution can take advantage, if you will, of the Dover Amendment. I guess it's, given what we know as citizens about the financial situation of the seminary, I mean, we may not know what their comprehensive plan is, but I don't think it's expansion. I mean, I think but they could, yes, I guess that's, okay. Do you want to say anything, and then I think we're probably going to start to wrap it up, because I think we've squeezed the orange of what we can do at this meeting. But
yeah, I appreciate that, and I appreciate the board's time, and I think that I would characterize a great deal of the comments tonight based on more of a concern for what happens with the campus as a whole, as opposed to the application that's actually before the board. I think in terms of the comments that were directed toward Harbor Light as opposed to Gordon Conwell, which I obviously can't speak for. I would just kind of put in the back of people's head, and when Andrew's here, he can do this much more effectively. And Kristen, please raise your hand if you want to correct anything that I say. These affordable projects, affordable housing projects, take a long time to build, in particular, to develop, to raise the money, to get the land, to get the approvals. One of the reasons that this project is so compelling to Harbor Light is that it offers an opportunity for a built project. And therefore, it really is both a streamlined opportunity for Harbor Light, being in the business that it is of creating affordable housing, and I think for the town, which has, as expressed in its housing production plan, the interest of creating a diversity of housing stock, including rental units, that can serve a broader base of the community. And I think that to the extent that some of these built projects take a lot of time to get the resources together, this really offers something special. And yes, Harbor Light takes a long time, like any other affordable housing group, to get those funds in place. But by gosh, they do it, and they do it again and again and again. And this is a really wonderful opportunity for the creation of affordable housing. The other option or the other mention was regarding the option. And I actually was not transaction counsel for this deal, so I'll come back to the board with answers on buildings E&F unless Kristen wants to jump in on that.
Yeah, I can jump in. The E&F are potentially could be held by Gordon Conwell and not sold to us. Understanding that this project would happen in phases, but they wanted to retain some ownership rights. So I can confirm that.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Very, very quickly, I'd like to re-echo what Rick said, but on the town's website, it describes the town as a rural suburban town, and I think the emphasis is rural, and when I hear 210 units in one place, it doesn't feel like it to me.
Thank you. Okay, I think, thank you. I think we've had a overview. We'll continue this hearing to August 3rd. A couple of things. First, a reminder that it may not be on Zoom, so if you want to be here or be heard, you may need to be here in person. When the agenda for the August meeting is posted, it will indicate whether it's going to be on Zoom as well. But at this point, unless the legislation is extended, it will be in person. We'll try to make sure that it's on TV for folks to watch, but it won't be interactive. And secondly, I guess I'm assuming that between now and then, the town and the applicant will work out the details of peer review process. If that doesn't happen, we probably would continue the hearing again until it does happen, and we would try to indicate that on the agenda. So, but for now, we'll continue this hearing to August 3rd, 2022, and thank you all for your attendance and your participation.
Very much.
Okay, and
Clarify, is that at 7 p.m. Mr. Chair?
It would be, yeah, 7 PM. I think we will be taking up the Asbury Commons, and that will, hold on, folks.
Folks, we're still in a meeting.
Folks, just,
Folks, we are still in an open meeting. Please be quiet.
please let me just finish addressing this question. So I think, well, we don't know what else will maybe come over the transom between, that we'll have to deal with, but we'll have Asbury Commons would probably be first, and then this. And so I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Is there a second?
I second.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay, thank you and good night. And again, thank you all for attending. Before I forget.